The day humanity left the Galactic Council. Everything collapsed. Commander Lori Winters took a deep breath as she straightened her dark blue uniform. Today would change the course of human history. She stood in the small preparation chamber outside, the main Galactic Council hall, surrounded by the 3 other members of the human delegation. "Are we really doing this?" asked Kate Murphy, the science director. Her fingers nervously adjusted the silver pins on her collar. Though she had worked with alien species for 20 years, the thought of what they were about to do made her stomach twist. "We've tried everything else," Ambassador Paul Gregory said. His voice was tired. At 67, he had spent most of his adult life trying to improve humanity's standing in the Council. 300 years of being treated like children is enough. Security Chief Daniel Ford nodded silently. As the youngest member of the delegation at 42, he represented the new generation of human leaders who had grown increasingly frustrated with Council restrictions. A soft chime sounded, indicating it was time. The massive doors carved from the wood of an extinct alien tree species slowly swung open. Beyond them lay the Galactic Council chamber, a vast circular room where representatives from 217 spacefaring civilizations gathered to govern the galaxy. The human delegation walked forward in perfect step. Their footfalls echoed in the sudden silence that fell over the chamber. Aliens of all shapes and sizes turned to watch them, some with multiple eyes, others with no visible eyes at all. Some breathed oxygen, others methane or hydrogen compounds. Some stood on legs, others floated, and a few rolled on specialized appendages. From the raised center platform, the Zarelian High Speaker watched them approach. His blue, translucent skin rippled with what those familiar with his species would recognize as annoyance. His eye stalks swiveled to track their movement. "The delegation from Earth and her colonies is recognized," the Zarelian announced, his words automatically translated by the neural implants each council member wore. "You have called for this special session. The council recognizes Commander Winters to speak." Lori stepped forward. The subtle gravity adjustments on the speaking platform accommodated her human physiology automatically. She looked around the chamber, meeting the gazes of as many representatives as she could. "For 3 centuries, humanity has contributed to this council," she began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "We've offered our innovations, our unique perspective, our military strength when needed." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And in return, we've been consistently undermined, our colonies restricted, our citizens treated as second-class members of the galactic community." A low murmur spread through the chamber. The jellyfish-like Medusans pulsed bright colors of disagreement. The rock-skinned granites rumbled their disapproval. "Humans always demanding special treatment." The Zarelian High Speaker clicked his mandibles in irritation. "The restrictions placed on your species were necessary precautions given your unpredictable nature." Daniel Ford stepped forward slightly, his hand resting near the ceremonial weapon at his hip. Several security drones above them shifted position in response. "Unpredictable?" Lori continued, her voice taking on an edge. "That's the word you use to justify limiting human colonies to 12 worlds when the Floraxians, with half our population, have 27? She gestured to the section where the plant-based Floraxians swayed gently. "That's your excuse for requiring human ships to carry council monitors at all times? For restricting our research into technologies that other species freely develop?" The ancient Catherine Elder raised her wrinkled hand from the elder species section. Her voice was like dry leaves rustling. "Commander, please understand. Humans develop and adapt at rates that concern many council members. The restrictions were meant to ensure stable growth throughout the galaxy." "Stable for whom?" "Ambassador," Gregory asked, stepping forward to join Lori. "While we've been held back, the Vespid Collective has expanded into 3 sectors that were promised for human development." The insectoid Vespids buzzed angrily at this direct accusation. "We have tried diplomatic solutions for generations," Lori continued. "We've filed formal complaints, requested arbitration, even accepted compromises that hurt our people. Nothing has changed." She nodded to Ambassador Gregory, who stepped forward and placed a sealed document on the central podium. The document glowed slightly, its quantum encryption ensuring it could not be altered. This is formal notice of humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Concordat. Effective immediately. The chamber erupted in chaos. The massive Urson representative roared in outrage while the delicate Vespid delegation buzzed in what might have been relief. The Zarelian's skin turned almost white with shock. "Impossible!" shouted the Draconian representative, his scales flaring red. "No species has ever left the Council. The Concordat forbids it." Check Section 7, Paragraph 153. Kate Murphy said calmly. "Written by the founding species and never changed because no one ever thought it would be used. A species may withdraw with immediate effect if they submit formal notice during a full council session." The Catherine Elder was already reviewing the text on her personal display. She looked up slowly. "The human is correct. The provision exists." "You understand what this means?" the Catherine continued, her ancient eyes focusing on Lori. "Without council protection, without access to shared technology and defensive pacts, we understand perfectly," Lori replied without hesitation. "We'll take our chances." Ambassador Gregory stepped closer to the center. "Humanity will honor all existing trade agreements with individual species for a transition period of 1 standard year. We will not interfere with Council activities unless they directly threaten human interests. And all Council personnel on human worlds and ships have 7 days to depart," Daniel Ford added, his tone making it clear this was non-negotiable. The Zarelian High Speaker's eye stalks quivered with barely controlled emotion. "This is unprecedented. The Council must discuss the implications. Perhaps if we were to review some of the restrictions." "It's too late for that," Lori said firmly. "For 3 centuries we've tried to be good citizens of the galaxy. Now we'll try being good neighbors instead." With that, the human delegation turned as one and began walking toward the exit. The chamber remained in shocked silence for several moments before erupting again in a cacophony of alien voices. "You think this is wise?" Kate whispered as they approached the doors. "Necessary, not wise," Lori responded quietly. "We should prepare for difficult times ahead." As they passed through the doorway, the ancient Catherine's voice rose above the chaos behind them. Though she spoke to the Council, her words carried to the departing humans. "The balance is broken. The patterns shift. Change comes." The massive door swung closed behind them with a deep, resonant thud that seemed to mark the end of one era and the beginning of another. The 4 humans stood straighter, feeling both the weight and the freedom of their decision. "Well," Ambassador Gregory said with a small smile, "that went about as expected. The real work begins now." None of them could have predicted just how quickly everything would fall apart. The day humanity left the Galactic Council, everything collapsed. 3 months had passed since humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council. Alan Bennett sat at his desk in the human embassy on Centauri Prime, studying the reports that filled his screen. As a junior diplomat, he wasn't supposed to notice patterns that his superiors missed. But there it was again. Another supply ship delayed, another communication network glitch. Alan ran his hand through his short brown hair and sighed. The Council worlds were trying to act as if everything was normal, but the evidence suggested otherwise. He pulled up another report, this one showing trade volumes across the Orion sector. The numbers were down 15% in just the last month. A soft knock on his door made him look up. Ambassador Olivia Carter stood there, her tall frame filling the doorway. At 65, she had the calm confidence that came from decades of diplomatic service. "You wanted to see me, Alan?" she asked, stepping into his small office. Alan nodded eagerly. "Yes, Ambassador. I've been tracking some unusual patterns." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Something's not right out there." "Ambassador?" Carter sat down, her expression curious. "Show me." Alan displayed his findings on the larger wall screen. Supply shipments from Council worlds are arriving late or not at all. The automated translation networks are showing unusual glitches when communicating with Council representatives. And look at these trade figures. The ambassador studied the data, her eyes narrowing as she processed the information. The Council relied on human programmers and engineers more than they'd ever admit, she said after a moment. Our withdrawal was always going to cause some disruption. This feels different, Alan insisted, pulling up another chart. The Morgalian trade representative let slip that their central banking system nearly collapsed last week. They had to shut down all interstellar transactions for 3 days. Ambassador Carter frowned. They kept that quiet. They're keeping a lot of things quiet. But I have contacts in the service industries around the council headquarters. They say attendance at meetings is down by half. Species are sending junior representatives or not showing up at all. Before the ambassador could respond, a priority alert flashed on both their screens. The message was simple, but shocking. The Galactic Council was calling an emergency session and requesting human observers. Well, Ambassador Carter said, her voice carefully neutral. That's unexpected. Meanwhile, across the sector on the human military outpost Horizon Station, Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez was spending another late night in the monitoring center. The large room was dimly lit except for the glow of screens showing ship movements across 3 sectors of space. Maria sipped her coffee as she tracked the movements of a council diplomatic vessel. Something about its course seemed odd. She zoomed out on her display and felt a chill run down her spine. It wasn't just one ship. Dozens of council military vessels were changing course, abandoning patrol routes they'd maintained for decades. She quickly sent a message to her superior officer, Admiral Scott Nelson. Within 10 minutes, the Admiral's heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Admiral Nelson was a large man with a thick gray beard and steady eyes. He nodded to Maria as he entered. "Show me what you found, Lieutenant." Maria highlighted the movement patterns on the main screen. "They're scrambling to cover gaps," she explained as they studied the holographic display. "Look at these routes. They're trying to maintain presence in too many systems with too few ships." The Admiral stroked his beard thoughtfully. The Council's defensive grid relied heavily on human tactical systems. Without our ships and our strategic algorithms, they're vulnerable, Maria finished. And I think someone out there knows it. They both stared at the display, watching as the Council fleet stretched itself thinner and thinner across the vast expanse of space. On Earth, the newly established independent human government had taken over the historic buildings in Geneva that once housed old Earth's United Nations. President Jason Hill sat at the head of the table in the main conference room, listening as reports came in from both Centauri Prime and Horizon Station. Vice President Melanie Ward sat to his right, her face concerned as she reviewed the information. "The Council is starting to unravel faster than anyone predicted," she said quietly. President Hill nodded, his expression grave. He was a tall man with dark skin and short gray hair, elected on a platform of human independence and strength. Our analyst gave them at least a year before serious problems emerged. It's been only 3 months. "The Zorellians reached out directly this morning," said Defense Secretary Greg Peters, a former military officer with a direct manner. "They're trying to act casual, but they're worried about their defense systems. Apparently, they're experiencing minor technical difficulties and wondered if we might have some spare engineering capacity." A few bitter laughs sounded around the table. After they led the charge to restrict human tech development for 50 years, Communications Director Natalie Flores shook her head in disbelief. "The nerve." President Hill held up his hand. "What did you tell them?" "That all our engineers are currently occupied with human projects," Greg replied, "but that we'd be happy to consider a formal request for assistance through proper channels." "Should we consider resuming limited cooperation?" asked Vice President Ward, always the pragmatist. "We made our point. Perhaps now we can negotiate from a position of strength." President Hill studied the reports again, taking his time before answering. "Not until they acknowledge our terms. Besides," he looked up at his leadership team, "it may already be too late." A message alert sounded, and an aide hurried in with a data tablet. The president read it quickly, his expression darkening. "What is it?" asked the vice president. "Long range. Sensors at our outer colony on Epsilon Eridani have detected something coming in from beyond the galactic barrier," President Hill said. "Something big. and the Council observation post that should have detected it first has gone silent. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. "Get me Commander Winters," the President ordered, "and prepare my ship. I need to see this for myself." In the vast emptiness of space beyond the galaxy's edge, something ancient and patient had been watching. For millennia, it had observed the rise of the Council, noted its strengths and its flaws. It had waited for the perfect moment for a sign of weakness. Now, as the great alliance that had kept peace for 12,000 years began to fracture from within, that moment had finally arrived. Crystalline ships, invisible to standard sensors, moved silently toward Council space. The collapse was about to accelerate. The day humanity left the Galactic Council, everything collapsed. 6 months after humanity's departure from the Galactic Council, the first major crisis struck. The emergency alert woke Dr. Samantha Powell from a deep sleep in her quarters at the Earth Defense Force headquarters. She fumbled for her communication device, blinking away sleep as the urgent message scrolled across the screen. Unknown vessels had crossed the outer boundary of what was once Council space. 3 colony worlds had already gone silent. Within an hour, Samantha was in the main briefing room with 24 other top officials. The large view screen showed grainy footage transmitted from a Council outpost before it too went dark. The images showed crystalline ships, beautiful and terrible, moving with impossible grace through space. "The Void Heralds," Samantha whispered, her voice carrying in the silent room. As head of xenobiology for the Earth Defense Force, she had studied even the most obscure alien species. They were thought to be just legends. General Eric Barnes, a stocky man with a perpetually serious expression, turned to her. "You know what these things are?" Samantha nodded slowly. "Ancient accounts mention them. A nomadic species from beyond the galactic barrier. They appear every few thousand years, harvest resources and energy, then disappear again. The last recorded appearance was 9,000 years ago, before humans even left Earth." The room was silent as everyone processed this information. President Hill, who had just arrived, stepped forward. "Why now?" he asked. "Why are they returning at this exact moment?" Samantha hesitated. "I can't say for certain, but the Council maintained an early warning system in the void between galaxies. It was designed to detect approaching threats and initiate defensive protocols." "Let me guess," Vice President Ward said grimly. "Human designed?" "Human designed and maintained," Samantha confirmed, "without regular updates from our programmers." The President's communication device beeped. He read the message and looked up. "The Council is sending a formal request for aid. They're practically begging for human intervention." On the Council emergency channel, which humanity still monitored. Despite their withdrawal, the panic was palpable. The transmission was filled with static, but the fear in the Tellurian commander's voice came through clearly. "Their defense protocols are completely ineffective against our standard responses," the alien reported, the translator struggling to keep up with his rapid speech. "We've lost contact with the Zarelian home fleet, requesting immediate assistance from any available ships." In the Earth Defense Force Analysis Center, Samantha worked with a team to understand the threat they were facing. Large screens displayed all available data on the Void Herald's ships and attack patterns. "Their technology operates on completely different principles," she explained to General Barnes as they reviewed the information. "The Council relies on predictive defense algorithms that were designed by human programmers to adapt and evolve. And without humans maintaining those systems," General Barnes let the implication hang in the air. "Exactly," Samantha nodded. "The algorithms have become static, predictable. The Void Heralds are exploiting patterns and weaknesses that should have been updated months ago." President Hill called an emergency session of the Human Independent Government. Representatives from all human colonies gathered in the Geneva chamber, some in person and others via secure holographic links. "We didn't want this," he told the assembled representatives, his voice solemn. "We just wanted equal treatment and respect for our sovereignty." The chamber was quiet. Many of these same people had cheered when humanity left the Council. Now they faced a threat that endangered everyone in the galaxy. "The question is," Vice President Ward said quietly, Do we let the council fall, or do we help them despite everything? Heated debate filled the chamber. Some argued that the council had brought this on themselves. Others pointed out that if the Void Heralds destroyed the council worlds, humanity would be next. In the Outer Rim territories, where council authority had always been weak, human colonies were thriving under independence. Frank Rivera, governor of the Epsilon Eridani colony, was overseeing the construction of a new defensive perimeter when the news reached him about the Void Heralds. "The council wants our help now?" He laughed bitterly, standing on an observation platform overlooking the half-built defense station, after they restricted our colony rights for 2 centuries. His assistant, Clara Morris, a young woman who had been born on the colony, looked troubled. "If the Void Heralds make it past council space, we'll be next." Governor Rivera's expression sobered. He watched as construction drones and human workers moved across the massive structure that would help protect their home. "Contact Earth," he said finally. "Tell them we're willing to contribute ships to a defensive action, but only if the Council acknowledges our sovereign rights out here." All across human space, similar conversations were happening. Old grudges competed with survival instincts. Pride wrestled with practicality. On a Council refugee ship fleeing from the advancing Void Heralds, a young Zarelian named Zeev huddled with his family. Their homeworld had been the first major Council planet to fall. Through the viewport he could see the stars streaking by as the overcrowded vessel pushed its engines beyond safe limits. "Where are we going?" Ziv asked his parent, his eye stalks quivering with fear. The elder Zarelian's skin rippled with complex emotions. "To human space," they answered after a moment's hesitation. They might help us." "But I thought humans were dangerous," Ziv said, repeating what he had been taught all his life. "Perhaps," his parent replied softly. "But right now, dangerous. Allies are better than none at all." Back on Earth, President Hill received the final tally of the vote. By a narrow margin, the human independent government had decided to offer assistance to the Council, with strict conditions. "Draft the response," he told his staff. "We will provide technical support to restore their defense systems and limited military aid against the Void Heralds. In exchange, they must formally recognize human independence, grant us the colony rights we've been requesting for generations, and provide full access to Council technology archives." "They won't like those terms," Vice President Ward noted. "They don't have to like them," President Hill replied. "They just have to accept them if they want to survive." As human ships prepared to move against the Void Heralds and human technicians readied themselves to repair the failing Council systems, no one could predict how this crisis would reshape the galaxy. The old order was crumbling, and whatever emerged from the ruins would be something entirely new. The stage was set for humanity's most difficult decision since leaving Earth. They had walked away from the Council to claim their independence. Now, ironically, the fate of the galaxy might depend on their return. The day humanity left the Galactic Council, everything collapsed. 1 year after humanity's departure, the galaxy was in chaos. The Void Heralds had claimed 12 former Council worlds. Trade routes were disrupted, causing food shortages across multiple sectors. The once mighty Galactic Council chamber stood nearly empty, with fewer than 50 species still sending representatives. President Hill's shuttle approached the massive Council station, flanked by an honor guard of human warships. Through the viewport he could see the faded grandeur of the station. Signs of neglect were visible even from a distance. Flickering exterior lights, dormant defense systems, and maintenance drones drifting aimlessly. "Remember," he told his delegation as they prepared to disembark, "we're not rejoining, we're negotiating as equals, as an independent power offering assistance." Ambassador Olivia Carter nodded, her expression determined. Behind her stood Alan Bennett, now promoted to senior advisor, and General Eric Barnes representing Earth's military interests. Dr. Samantha Powell completed the delegation, there to assess the technical challenges they would face. The Council chamber looked diminished. Where once hundreds of species had gathered in grandeur, now only a fraction remained, many appearing haggard and desperate. Empty seats outnumbered occupied ones. The grand holographic displays that once showed the wealth of the galaxy now flickered, with static. The Zorelian high speaker, once so dismissive of humanity, now rose to greet them with exaggerated courtesy. His blue skin had faded to a pale shade, and his eye stalks drooped slightly. "The Council welcomes our human friends and hopes for a productive discussion of mutual benefit," he announced, his translator conveying the formal words. Ambassador Carter stepped forward, her expression neutral. "Let's be clear about what's happening here. Your systems are failing because they were built on human innovation that you claimed as your own. Your defenses are crumbling because they relied on human strategic thinking that you never properly acknowledged." The Kethrin elder, looking even more ancient than before, nodded slowly. Her wrinkled face showed none of the pride that had once characterized council leadership. "We underestimated humanity's contribution to the galactic infrastructure. More accurately," General Barnes added, his voice firm, "you deliberately minimized it to keep us in a subordinate position." President Hill raised his hand, silencing further accusations. "What's done is done. The question is, what happens now? We've developed a three-phase plan to address the immediate crisis with the Void Heralds and stabilize critical systems." As the president outlined the plan, human technical experts were already boarding council facilities across the galaxy. Linda Evans, a senior systems architect with gray-streaked dark hair and quick eyes, led a team onto the Central Nexus station, the heart of the council's communication network. The Nexus was a maze of technology from dozens of species, accumulated over thousands of years. Linda had worked here as a junior engineer 20 years ago, before being reassigned due to security concerns about humans having too much access. "It's worse than we thought," she reported after her initial assessment. Her team moved through dimly lit corridors filled with humming equipment. "They've been trying to patch the systems with incompatible technologies. We'll need to rebuild from the foundation up." A Tellurian engineer hovered nearby, his tentacles twisting nervously. "The council always said human systems were unstable and needed constant oversight," he admitted. "We never realized that meant they needed human oversight specifically." Linda just nodded and continued her work. There was too much to do to waste time on vindication. On the battlefield, human military vessels engaged the Void Heralds directly for the first time. Captain Ryan Collins of the starship Defiance led a mixed fleet of human and council ships against the crystalline invaders. His bridge was a model of calm efficiency as officers monitored displays and issued commands. "Follow our lead," he instructed. The alien captains threw the fleet communication channel. "Their patterns seem random, but there's an underlying logic our systems can track." The council ships, accustomed to relying on rigid battle protocols, struggled to adapt to the human approach. But as the battle progressed, they began to follow the Defiance's example, adjusting their tactics in real time rather than waiting for central command approval. The crystalline ships of the Void Heralds moved like predators, their strange geometries defying conventional physics. They fired weapons that seemed to bend reality itself, creating shimmering distortions that could tear a ship apart from the inside. "Evasive pattern Delta," Captain Collins ordered, as a Void Herald ship targeted the Defiance. His crew responded instantly, the ship dancing away from the enemy attack with precision. A council vessel nearby wasn't so fortunate. It exploded in a silent blossom of light and debris. "Stay focused," Collins told his crew, his voice steady. "Remember the simulations. We've trained for this." The battle raged for hours, stars occasionally obscured by weapons fire and debris. Slowly, the human-led tactics began to show results. The Void Herald ships, for all their advanced technology, couldn't adapt to the unpredictable human approach. When the last crystalline ship finally retreated, cheers erupted across the combined fleet. It was the first decisive victory against the invaders since they had appeared 6 months ago. Back in the council chamber, negotiations continued. The formal document was displayed on the main screen for all to see. The terms were steep: full recognition of human independence, reparations for centuries of restricted development, and seats on all major council committees for human representatives, not as members, but as equal partners. You're essentially demanding we acknowledge humans as a superior power, the Zarelian speaker clicked angrily, some of his old pride resurfacing despite their desperate situation. We're demanding you acknowledge reality, President Hill replied, calmly. The galaxy needs humanity. We're willing to help, but never again as second-class citizens of your empire. The Kethrin elder, who had been silent during much of the negotiation, finally spoke. The old ways are ending, she said, her ancient voice carrying across the chamber. Perhaps they needed to end. We built a system that claimed to value diversity but feared true difference. Humans were restricted not because they were inferior, but because they were too unpredictable. She turned her gaze to President Hill. Your terms are harsh but fair. I, for one, vote to accept them. One by one, the remaining council representatives voted. Some did so with obvious reluctance, others with resignation, and a few with what seemed like relief. The galaxy had changed forever, and there was no going back to the old order. As the final vote was tallied, President Hill and the Zarelian speaker stood face to face in the center of the chamber. The future begins today, President Hill said, extending his hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, the Zarelian extended his slender arm, his three-fingered hand meeting the humans in a historic moment. The council had fallen, but perhaps something better would rise in its place. The day humanity left the Galactic Council, everything collapsed. 5 years after humanity left the Galactic Council, the shape of interstellar civilization had changed completely. The Council still existed, but in a dramatically different form, less a governing body and more a forum for cooperation between independent powers. The new Galactic Concordat signing ceremony took place in the rebuilt council chamber. Light streamed in through the crystal dome, illuminating representatives from all surviving species. The room hummed with quiet conversation in dozens of languages as they waited for the historic moment. The human delegation, led by the newly elected President Laura Mitchell, entered the chamber. President Mitchell was tall with short silver hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. Unlike previous human representatives who had been assigned seats in the outer rings, she and her team took their place at the central table alongside the 5 other major powers that had emerged from the chaos. The old order was built on illusions of superiority and control. President Mitchell addressed the assembly, her voice clear and strong. It collapsed not because humanity left, but because it was unsustainable. True cooperation cannot exist alongside manipulation and hierarchy. The Zarelian speaker, now serving as an equal representative rather than a superior, nodded in agreement. After years of working with humans as partners, many council species had come to appreciate the direct human approach. Together, we have faced the greatest threat in 12,000 years, the Zarelian said, and together, we have prevailed. The Void Heralds had been pushed back beyond the galactic barrier 2 years ago. The combined fleet, using human tactical systems and the best technology from a dozen species, had finally defeated the ancient enemy. The cost had been high, 17 worlds lost completely, dozens more damaged, but the galaxy had survived. After the ceremony, Linda Evans walked through the newly redesigned Central Nexus Station. As Chief Technology Officer of the Galactic Communications Network, she had overseen its complete rebuilding. The new system incorporated technology from all major species, with safeguards to prevent any single group from controlling it entirely. The redundancies seem excessive, commented her Tellurian colleague as they inspected a new installation. Linda smiled. That's the point. No more single points of failure. If human systems go down, Tellurian systems take over. If both fail, Zarelian technology steps in. The galaxy learned its lesson about putting all its eggs in one basket. On the human colony world of New Terra, Amanda West walked through fields of alien-human hybrid crops that were helping to feed billions across 3 sectors. The golden plants swayed gently in the breeze, their unusual spiral pattern catching the sunlight. As agricultural director, she had implemented techniques that combined human innovation with alien botanical knowledge, a collaboration that would have been tightly restricted under the old council. A small group of visitors followed. Her representatives from worlds that once would have looked down on humans as junior partners in the galactic community. We never wanted to see the council fall, she explained to a visiting Tellurian diplomat as they inspected the golden fields. We just wanted the freedom to reach our potential. The Tellurian's translator rendered a sound that might have been wistful. Perhaps that is what we all needed. The old ways kept all of us limited, not just humans. In deep space, the research vessel Curiosity approached the mysterious phenomenon known as the Veil Nebula. For centuries, the Council had declared this region off limits, claiming it was too dangerous for exploration. Now, with those restrictions lifted, the combined research team was about to make history. Chief Scientist Noah Williams, a man with dark skin and thoughtful eyes, prepared to lead the first expedition through the previously restricted zone. The bridge of the Curiosity was staffed by a mixed crew, humans working alongside Zorellians, Tellurians, and even a young Kethran researcher. Final preparations complete, Captain, he reported to Captain Heather Ross, a veteran of the Void. Herald conflict. Any last-minute advice from our Kethran colleagues? She asked, nodding toward the ancient species representative who had joined the mission. Noah smiled. They say they're as clueless as we are. That's what makes it exciting. On Earth, in the headquarters of the new Galactic Defense Network, Admiral Maria Rodriguez, promoted after her insights had helped identify the Void Herald threat, received a message from the deep space monitoring stations. The final piece of the new galactic infrastructure had come online, a cooperative defense network that incorporated technology and strategic thinking from 12 different species with no single point of failure. Status report? She asked her aide. All systems green, Admiral. The network detected a test probe at the edge of the Andromeda approach and responded perfectly. Response time was 12% faster than our previous system. Maria nodded with satisfaction. The galaxy was safer now than it had been under the old council, not because one power dominated, but because all contributed their strengths. In what was once the private chamber of the council leadership, now converted into an open meeting space, Ziv the Zorellian sat across from Alan Bennett, discussing the final details of a new trade agreement between their worlds. Both had risen in the ranks of their respective governments during the tumultuous years of change. My parents still find it strange, Ziv commented, his translator conveying the light tone. Working with humans as equals. They were taught all their lives to think of your species as dangerous children who needed supervision. Alan laughed. And we were taught that the Council was an unbreakable institution that would last forever. We were all wrong about many things, Ziv replied, his skin rippling in the Zorellian equivalent of a shrug. Perhaps that's the most important lesson. Nothing lasts forever, especially systems built on inequality. As the signing of the new Concordat concluded, President Mitchell stood with the other leaders in the center of the chamber. Above them, the names of all species were now inscribed in equal size around the central dome, a symbolic reminder that the stars belonged to everyone. When humanity left the council, everything seemed to collapse, the Kethran elder said to her, her ancient voice carrying wisdom earned through millennia. But sometimes old structures must fall for new ones to rise. President Mitchell looked around at the diverse gathering, at former enemies now working as partners, at the new galactic civilization emerging from the ruins of the old. The collapse was necessary, she agreed. And what we're building now is stronger because we're building it together. The galaxy had been forced to learn a painful lesson. True strength comes from diversity and cooperation between equals, not dominance and control. From the ruins of the old order, something better had emerged, a future where all species could reach their full potential, side by side among the stars.